Good evening, everybody. Thanks for taking time out of your evening to join us. My name's Stewart. I'm an Assistant Community Development Director with the City of Livermore. Been working here about 23 years. I'm also a Livermore resident. I'm joined tonight by Paul Spence, our Community Development Director, Assistant Planner Shannon Pagan, and Associate Planner Cam Pierwall. And Doug Mann is...
I'm with Citizens for Balanced Growth, and we are the people that consult with the city for the funding, which we do have, that we can use to buy the hill and keep it open space if that's what the neighbors would like to do.
So we'll talk a little bit more about the details of that fund and how that works and what the steps are entailed in accessing that money. Again, the idea here is to share information about the project, the process, go a little bit about the history, kind of what the next steps are, try and help you be as fully informed as possible. And then we'll have a time for a Q&A at the end. We'll try our best to answer any questions that you might have. And if we can't get to them tonight, we'll develop a kind of an FAQ piece that we'll end up posting on our webpage. And so we'll start with kind of just a general overview of the development review process and what happens when folks own land and when they want to do stuff on their property. Basically, it's the state planning and zoning law is the main framework that establishes requirements for cities and counties to have a long-range plan, often called a general plan, and then a zoning code which implements that. So there's also some other state laws called the Subdivision Map Act that has laws around what you have to follow both as a city and as a developer, for example, when you want to divide up land into lots for residential houses, for example, or industrial complexes or shopping malls, or if you want to subdivide your property and build a duplex, for example. And then the Permit Streamlining Act is another law that sort of establishes timelines and procedures to make sure that projects move forward with a process and allows the public to participate and gets to a conclusion at some point. And then at the local level, we have a general plan and a Livermore Development Code, which is our zoning code. Again, the general plan is a policy document. It sets forth policies for how the city will grow or develop or preserve land for about a 10 to 20 year time period. Our current general plan was done in 2003. We're about 2 years into a comprehensive update for a general plan that'll look out to the year 2045. And there are opportunities to participate in that process if you're interested. We are developing a draft land use scenario over the next couple of months, and if you haven't seen us out at farmers markets or other local events, there's opportunities to participate in workshops online and through other channels. The website for that is Imagine Livermore 2045, and again, that'll set development and preservation policy for another 20 years or so. The development code implements the general plan, so that essentially governs the way that land is used or developed. Like, it'll establish the height of buildings, how far they're set back from the road, from each other, how big they are, the bulk of them, the design. And for uses, it ensures that uses are compatible with each other, so you don't have schools, for example, next to gas stations or things like that. All California cities and counties have a general plan. This is the city's general plan map. And you can see in the middle is the 32-acre Garaventa Hills project site. It's The different colors on the map mean different types of land uses. The shades of brown and yellow are generally residential, red's commercial. This is Frick Lake up here. But you'll see the site's general plan designation has a UL1, which is urban low residential 1, which is I think 1 to 2 units to the acre. Shares the same general plan designation of some of the other lands out there. Bluffs is a little higher density there. Yeah. Then this is the zoning map that implements the development policies in the general plan. And so again, the Garaventa site is kind of right in the middle there, outlined in light blue. It has a zoning designation of Plan Unit Development 115, which identifies that it was part of the zoning and development plan. Whoa, you don't have to touch it for it to move. Part of the development plan for the development to the south, some of the development to the east. And so that's the gray there, means plan development or plan unit development. Those zoning designations mean that you can tailor the development to respect earthquake fault zones, for example, hills, other resources like creeks, and then move the development to around different places where typical zoning wouldn't allow it. But a lot of the zoning out here is PD or plan development. And again, this is designed to implement the general plan. So the Garaventa Hills project is the actual development applications are, I'm sorry, I may have missed
You could just jump to the part where we save the hill, Steve.
yeah, we'll have FAQ at the end there, Doug, thanks. So again, every property owner has a right to apply to use their property, to develop structures that could range in size from accessory dwelling units, ADUs you might have heard, sheds, gazebos, residential development. The city's obligated to process those applications and evaluate those for consistency with the general plan and zoning. In the Garaventa, that process also allows property owners or developers to make changes to the project to gain consistency with those codes and general plan. So, for example, if you're going to build a gazebo in your backyard, you may not get the building code or the electrical code right the first time. You have an opportunity to go back and forth, fix it, and get it to comply with those codes. Yes?
Hey, Steve, I'm just wondering, when you're talking through the processes, are you going to take questions, like if we have a question about the process itself? Not the development, but what you're talking about. Yeah,
we can, I'd like to do questions at the end about everything.
Okay.
It's just to make sure we kind of finish.
Okay.
I have about 30 minutes or so, okay. And then about an hour for the most important parts of your questions and other information. Is that all right?
Thank you.
Sure. So in the Garaventa Hills case, the property does have a general plan and residential zoning designation. They resubmitted a project and paid for to move forward again after a court decision. I'll talk about all that later in March and April. And it's the city's role to evaluate that application again against the general plan and zoning and design standards. So there are various roles that the parties play in the development process. Staff will look at the application, evaluate it for consistency with the general plan, zoning, design standards and guidelines. We'll refer that project out to other agencies like Livermore Area Recreation and Park District, Zone 7 Flood Control Agency, Public Works, Police, Fire, to get their comments on development. And then we'll take all that information, prepare a staff report, and that document, along with some technical studies, are typically put in a package for the planning commission, for the public to look at, the planning commission and city council to look at when they're making their decisions on a project. The planning commission will, in this case, be advisory to the city council. And they typically will act in two ways when they're looking at a project. There's a legislative way, if they're considering a new law or a new code, or if they want to change a law or a code, or they're acting in their quasi-judicial role where they're applying existing law and evaluating a project if it meets it or not. City council is the decision maker in in this case, both roles. They'll also be acting in a similar role. A legislative role is when they're looking at new laws or changing existing laws, or in the Garaventa case, a quasi-judicial role where they're evaluating a project for conformance with existing law. We're not proposing to change any laws to allow this project to move forward. Legislative decisions have a lot of discretion where the city council can say, nope, we don't think that project's appropriate. We're not going to approve it. Quasi-judicial, they're not obligated to approve it, but they do have to look at it very closely in comparison to the existing laws and standards in place. So there's not as broad discretion to say, I don't like the project, so I'm not approving it, basically. And so again, in the Garaventa Hills project, they'll be acting in a quasi-judicial role to make sure that the project complies with our zoning and general plan. The project itself has not changed since the 2018 and 19 approvals. And so they based on city council direction, did a number of revisions to the project to gain consistency with our general plan and zoning. Part of the development review process is also includes environmental review under the California Environmental Quality Act, which is CEQA for short. And the main purpose of CEQA is to fully inform the public and decision makers about the potential environmental impacts of a project. Also foster coordination between other agencies like the ones I mentioned before, but also including federal and state resource agencies. And then enhance public participation in the process. So there's a separate public process that allows input on the environmental documents for projects. And just really quickly, an overview of CEQA. The first step is determine if it's a project or not. Project is any sort of activity a governmental organization carries out that will have an impact on the environment or may have an indirect but foreseeable impact on the environment. So that means it's a project. Once it's a project, there's a number of exemptions that CEQA has in it. This Garaventa project is not exempt, so it's subject to CEQA. Then the third step, will it result in significant environmental impacts? And then depending on the answer to that, if there are no significant impacts, negative declaration or a mitigated negative declaration is prepared. It's an environmental document that includes a statement that there's no impacts to the environment. Or if there are significant impacts, then an environmental impact report is prepared, and that's what was done for the Garaventa Hills project. And the idea of an environmental impact report is to identify those unavoidable impacts and include project features that will minimize or reduce those environmental impacts to levels that are not significant anymore. This is about 2 years worth of college stuff in about 5 minutes, so sorry. And then finally, Public hearings for development review process. There'll be a few. I already mentioned for CEQA, the Planning Commission will hold a public hearing to allow comments on the environmental document. And then after the public comment period, just 45 days on that closes, and we'll talk about calendar later on. The Planning Commission will hold a public hearing. It'll be a recommendation to the City Council, and then the City Council will hold another public hearing where the final decision would be made. So that's kind of an overview of the development process and what this project's gone through since about 2011, if you count all of the time. So just a little bit of history on the site and the area back there. The site, Garaventa and the surrounding area, had residential designations on it from our 1976 plan. It was revised in 1988, where they lowered the density a little bit from 4.5 units to the acre to 2 to 3 units to the acre. Back in that 2003 general plan update, it was changed again and lowered the density from 3 units to the acre to 1 to 1.5 units to the acre. In 2012 is when Lafferty applied to have applied for the development. They were proposing 76 residential units with a bridge over
Pardon me,
Altamont
Steve,
Creek.
you hired Lafayette Gregory in 2011.
Right.
So,
Can we wait till the end? I'm happy to talk about
Okay.
environmental stuff in the process. So 2012, application moved forward to 76 units. And that included a general plan amendment, changed the existing law to allow more units than the actual general plan and zoning allowed. They worked with staff on projects. On the project, we got them to reduce it down to 47 units. Heard from the public, they didn't want the Park Street Bridge, so that was removed. And that did not require a general plan amendment. And then in 2014, it made it to the Planning Commission. Planning Commission recommended denial due to the extensive grading and aesthetics concern from the Park District on impacts to the adjacent Garaventa Wetlands Preserve. They did some more work on the project. We met with the Park District to address their concerns. Those features were included into the project. Planning Commission at that time recommended approval to the City Council, but the City Council said, go back, work on your project some more, make it more subordinate to the landform out there, and then come back to the Planning Commission. So over that about 2.5-year time period, they did work on the project, removed units, narrowed the street widths, provided more single-story houses, lowered some of the retaining walls, tried to reduce the amount of overall grading, and added back in the bridge over Hawk Street, but it would be only for emergency vehicles, pedestrians, and bicycles, or any type of mobility equipment. Planning Commission recommended approval 2018. City Council considered the project in the environmental document and approved it in 2019. And the approval was challenged by Save the Hill Group in 2019, or at least that's when the court decision was. I don't know when the exact filing was, but the Superior Court denied the lawsuit, but then on appeal, the appellate court reversed that decision and sent it back to the lower court for further proceedings with direction to the city to remove or rescind the approvals of the project in the environmental document, and said that the no project alternative in the environmental impact report was inadequate because it failed to disclose and analyze open space funding that could be used to conserve the property as part of their no project alternative. So So in late 2022, almost a year ago, the city council did remove or rescind the approvals for the project, and they also decertified the environmental impact report. So those were no longer approved. And later in the spring of 2023 is when Lafferty said, we want to remedy what the court said was wrong with our environmental document and move forward with doing that and go through the process again. And that is kind of where we're at today. So they do have an application in for the same development. It's 44 homes, 6, sorry, I'm jumping ahead. I'll get to the project in a second. The way that environmental review documents are handled is the developer will pay for that to the city. The city will go and hire an environmental consultant so that we retain control over the document, the content. The developer's not allowed to review it or have input into it so that it remains.
But they pay for it.
They do pay for it, right?
All
Which
of
I
it.
think I just said.
Right.
They pay that. City administers the contract, and so we have oversight of how it's prepared. Then it's released to the public for public review. But anyways, that's how an environmental impact report is handled. On the payment side, who administers it? It's the city. So the court decision talked about these open space funds, and we'll go into some more details on those now. So in particular, they mentioned the Altamont Landfill Open Space Fund and the Doherty Valley Settlement Agreement Fund. Regarding the Altamont Fund, that was established in 1999 when the Altamont landfill wanted to expand through litigation and an eventual settlement. The landfill operator was obligated to pay a fee for each ton of waste disposed that could go towards acquiring open space. So right now there's about $20.6 million in that account that could be used to acquire open space. The first priority that's in the settlement agreement for open space to be acquired is it has to be biologically diverse. Second is that it has to have significant visual values and or non-motorized recreation, so value for trails or passive recreation. Again, about $20.6 million in that account. The Doherty Valley Settlement Agreement, which Doug and his group Citizens for Balanced Growth were parties to, along with the city and a handful of other parties, was a settlement agreement basically over development in the Tassajara Valley and the provision of water. The settlement agreement required the developers out there at the time, Windermere, Chappelle, and a handful of other developers, to pay $1,000 for each residential unit built to a fund to be used for open space. Resulted in $5.7 million. There's about $4.9 million in that account now. And the priorities for that are for acquiring open space from willing sellers of agriculture or open space for either in fee or with easements. But anyways, for acquiring open space or agricultural lands to preserve. Those funds can be used north of I-580 and basically east of Dublin. And again, there's about $4.9 million in that account. Back to the Altamont Open Space Fund, there's a process for both of these funds and how those funds can be accessed. The Altamont Open Space Committee consists of Alameda County, the Sierra Club, City of Livermore, and City of Pleasanton. City of Livermore, Sierra Club, and Alameda County make decisions on money that's expended in East County. These are the priorities that the committee has identified for West County and East County, including Doolan Canyon, the Alkali Sink area of Springtown, Altamont Wildlife Corridor, and some Coral Hollow and Cedar Mountain in the south part of the county. There's a lot of text on this slide. Sorry, I'm not going to go over each of it, but these points here basically help the committee understand or evaluate grant applications for what has significant native biodiversity value. Same with the second priority that's in the settlement agreement for non-motorized recreation or visual character. The committee's also adopted 3 criteria to evaluate proposals for acquisitions. Those include strategic value and land protection. So is it at risk of being developed? Is it in a place that could lead to further protection? Is it contiguous to other protected lands? So that's the sort of strategic value there. Are there other funding sources to partner with that money? So, typically they can be pretty expensive. So you try and find partners like East Bay Regional Park District, Tri-Valley Conservancy, to City of Livermore to partner together and fund. And finally, the last criteria adopted by the committee is willing sellers. Is the property on the market? Is the owner willing to sell it? Over time, that committee has spent about a little over $7 million to acquire a little under 1,300 acres throughout East County. City of Livermore has bought a few of those, and some in partnership with Citizens for Balanced Growth. And then turning to the Doherty Valley Settlement Agreement, those again are for acquiring property from willing sellers, agricultural or open space lands, about $4.9 million in that account. The transactions in green are the ones we've used the Doherty Valley Settlement Agreement money to contribute towards. They were also partnered with money from East Bay Park District and the Altamont money to put together a package to buy these properties. And they're outlined in green here, 79 acres up here called Eddie's Flat, and then the Farber property over here to the east of the Garaventa site. And those are currently owned by East Bay Park District. They've developed some staging area facilities here. Eventually, this will be part of the Brushy Peak complex. It doesn't have trails on there already. So both of these open space funds have requirements for willing sellers. The Garaventa family has not been a willing seller to the city. We'll ask them again, but it's been our experience for years now that they're in a contract with Lafferty. They're not interested in selling it to the city. And so, based on our experience with these committees, the acquisition of the Garaventa piece or Garaventa property would not be eligible to use these funds based on the criteria that are in place and have been used over the last 15 years. So the current project talked about a little bit. It's 44 single-family homes. I think there are eight single-story units. There are 6 affordable units that are duets on the corners. So a total of 44 homes, 38 single-family, 6 affordable. The lot sizes range from a little over 8,500 square feet to over 13,000 square feet. The home sizes range from about 2,400 square feet to a little over 3,000 square feet. The 2-story homes are about almost 32 feet tall. There's a 35-foot height maximum there. And then there's eight one-story homes. The project will have publicly accessible and sort of more improved trails out to the rock outcrop. Again, the emergency vehicle access from Hawk Street. It'll allow also trail use for students or pedestrian bikes. And some of the revisions that they've made, we're pushing the development further back to sort of to preserve as much of that first knoll as possible, and then have some view corridors into the site and the knolls from Altamont Creek Park down here. Part of the other piece of this is in order to offset or compensate for the environmental impacts of the 32-acre site, the Garaventa family also owns this 85-acre mitigation site, and that'll be set aside and permanently preserved for federal and state endangered plant and animal and amphibian species, and Altamont Creek here. So that'll be under a permanent easement, managed over perpetuity, using funds from an endowment that the developer is going to have to establish. And that'll be sort of enable a contiguous spring alkali preserve in the Springtown Preserve area there. So that's part of the project. Next steps. I mentioned the public hearing for the environmental impact report. We anticipate that could be in January. We'll try and update the schedule as things occur. It's fluid, so this is what we're anticipating at this point. And then hearings at the Planning Commission and City Council in the spring of 2024. And again, if those change, we'll try and let you know the schedule. So we'll turn it over to questions about all of this. If you have any other questions after we leave tonight, this is my direct phone line, my email address. If you'd like to be put on a distribution list to be notified of future meetings or project status, send me an email. We'll get you on the master list and make sure you're contacted that way as well. And just getting into a question that Doug Mann raised or mentioned earlier on the start on the environmental impact report was 2011. I was younger then, so maybe my memory is off.
That's why you forget.
Yeah. So I'll have to clarify the timing of that stuff.
Yeah, they were hired in 2011
right.
By the city. But the developer asked you to hire them. You didn't do a bid process or anything to make sure that you were getting an environmental organization that was on our side. They asked you to hire them. They told you how much they wanted to pay. Right. They paid you the money, and you paid the exact same amount of money, which is not uncommon for agencies in general.
I don't hear a question there, but just to respond, so we've used Lamford Gregory on a lot of projects. They're a reputable environmental consulting firm. They've done a lot of work in Alameda County. They've done a lot of work in the Tri-Valley. They're a reputable firm. So,
is there any reason why you wouldn't want to put this out to bid? Just get two more environmental firms to chime in on what they'll do as far as creating the environmental impact report that is best for Livermore?
I don't know, Doug. I'd have to go back and look exactly when we made that decision.
Have you hired Lamford Gregory?
Yes.
They have been hired. Oh, because last time it went to the council for consent calendar to be approved before you hired Lamford Gregory. This time it did not go to consent calendar?
Right.
Why is that?
Because the budget amount is under the amount that requires council approval.
You do know that we want to be informed about all of these things as they come. We didn't this is important, Steve.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah. So I do want to have other folks an opportunity I would like other folks to ask questions. We have an opportunity to talk quite a bit offline and outside of this meeting.
Yeah, I have a question. When's Doug's presentation? Because I want him to do one like that too.
Well, he's more than welcome to organize a
Yeah,
neighborhood meeting.
Well,
and
the reason
have
I'm
that.
asking is because when you went to court, right, it was the city and the developer versus the citizens, right?
Right.
So when you give a presentation, I'm under the assumption that you're a little bit biased, right?
Appreciate that.
A little bit, So that's why I give more credence to Doug when it comes to this, because I know he's trying to save the property. But the question I had was, is this meeting a public record, does it go on public record?
It's not an official public noticed meeting and things. We'll put the recording online. And it'll
Just
be
the
available.
recording that just ended?
Can you check
That was
that
for
out?
the presentation.
Okay. So then-
We're making another
There's
recording.
another one
The
in the back.
entire night will be
There's a camera.
available to everybody
I
to
mean,
review.
That's
two
good,
cameras.
but I mean, if this meeting's not a matter of public record with the city, then these comments, the comments that are going to be made here, you're not exactly, going to be held accountable to, because the only language that the city seems to understand so far is litigation, right? So things that are going to be said now with the camera turned off, that's just going to go into one ear, not the other, right?
No. Appreciate your
Yeah,
question. So we're doing this to try and convey information and share it and be transparent.
okay.
Like I said, we're obligated to process a development application. Lafferty has applied to move forward. We're evaluating the project on the general plan and the zoning, and trying to help folks understand the process. This was done because folks wanted to have a neighborhood meeting a long time ago when the project wasn't sort of even
Okay.
moving anywhere.
Well, I just want to make sure people here understand that, the comments that are going to be made from here on after aren't going to exactly hold as much weight as if you showed up to the city council meeting or something like that, right?
So
We would
just wanna
definitely
make that
encourage you to
clear.
show up to these.
Yeah, and we're
meetings as well.
not decision makers, right? Ultimately, your
Right.
planning commission is the recommending body.
Well, it
Steve
seems
pointed-
like
Can I finish?
everybody I talk to
Can I
in the
finish?
city says that they're not the decision maker, but somebody keeps making these decisions, so, right?
Such as?
Such as proceeding with this project.
So I think as Steve tried to point out this evening,
Yeah,
we have a system in place, and all cities do,
yeah,
that require city staff to process permits.
yeah.
Many of these requirements are established by the state. They're part of a city's obligation.
Yeah.
If you want to put a shed in your yard, as Steve said,
Right.
you've got to come and get a permit. If a developer wants to develop a piece of property,
Yeah.
there's a permit process. And we don't have the authority or ability to say, no, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
we don't want to process your permit.
Well, on the topic of permits, I think just last year, the city approved a permit to build utilities for Garaventa, right? And that permit was never supposed to be approved, right? So there's something to be said about the permits that the city approves. And also, the city did end up going to court and losing, right? Those were permits you also approved, right? So there's something to remember there. And also, I guess I'll pose a question. You say, if I want to build a shed in my backyard, then I have to go to the city and ask for a permit. What if I wanted to build a skyscraper? Would you allow me to do that?
You would have to come in and,
Well,
can I you ask me a question?
Okay, yeah, go ahead. Well, I understand the answer already. It's too long. The answer should be no. It's an absurdity for a reason, that what I'm asking, because I want to point out that the city does have the authority to make decisions over what's built and what's not. Right.
So if you did come to the public counter and say, I want to build a skyscraper, we
Yeah.
would say no.
Yeah.
The general plan and zoning don't allow it.
And we would
Right.
say no, and that's what I was going to try to answer for
Okay.
you. We would say no because our codes establish certain regulations about how the land can be used.
Yeah.
right? If you buy a piece of residential property, maybe you have a single-story home.
Yeah.
The code would allow you to build a second story.
Right.
And so we don't make those decisions. Those decisions are made by city councils ultimately that set the rules in place. We refer to the codes and review the codes, and
Yeah.
that's how we process permits. And so that's what we're doing here as well. I think, Steve pointed out there was, long ago, a residential designation put in place.
Yeah.
We didn't decide that. We're just.
Well, I mean, residential designations have been put in place before, like the Farber property, right? But then later it was overturned and it was preserved, right? So it's not like.
Yeah, that
just
property
because-
still does have a residential designation on it. We'll probably change it with the general plan update. but we had a willing seller there who wanted to
Yeah.
sell the property to the city. We negotiated a transaction there.
Well, I think if you're talking about money, willing sellers are, it's a matter of how much the property's worth. So if you're allowing the developer to put initially 76 homes, now 44, of course, if you're going to allow to destroy the property, then the property's worth building on, right? Because then there's an incentive financially to actually develop it. If you don't allow the developer to grade the land and destroy the natural landscape, then the seller would become a willing seller because there wouldn't be any profit in developing it. So, does that make sense?
It does. So if somebody has, and perhaps after we're done with this question, we can let other people ask questions. And
Yeah,
if you wanna stand up
you and I are
later-
hogging the whole thing.
If you want to
so-
stand up later, we can answer more of yours. But I see other people going like this around the room.
Yeah.
So if somebody has a designation on their property, the city can make a change to it, but if we remove all economic value from the property, if we said, we're going to change the designation on this property from residential to open space, that would be a taking.
I'm not asking you to do that. It's just when you said in 2013 there was 47 homes allowed to build on there, and then after 10 years of consideration, you only removed 3 homes to try and mitigate the, aesthetic and environmental impact that you're going to have on the neighborhood. You only removed 3 homes. That's not really. I'm not.
So this is a
convinced
second.
that
This is
you're
another.
trying. I'm going to let other people.
Yeah,
ask
if you could,
questions.
that'd be nice.
So can you tell us then, so maybe answer or tell us, Steve, you had mentioned putting up a website. Can you maybe talk a little bit about that? You had said possibly setting up a website about this project. And then the other thing maybe you guys can share to help people understand the process. Who do we send? I mean, like if I send an email to you, everyone in this room sends an email to you, are you going to have time to answer all of those? You know what I mean? I mean, there becomes an overwhelming thing when you're talking about something on this scale. So maybe if you guys could talk to or about how we as residents can talk to you guys or send in comments. Maybe not all of us can go to city council meetings, and now we can't do Zoom because of other stuff. So maybe if you guys could speak to that, it would be helpful for people to understand how to get their point across or their opinion across.
Sure. So we have a web page on the city's website, and I can send that link around. If you go to the city's page and search Garaventa, you'll find it. But we intend to build that up and have it be a little more, probably not interactive, but to be updated with the latest information, the latest calendar, and again, like I said, we'll try and put some frequently asked questions and answers on there. Of course, you get all overwhelm me and email me all day, and that wouldn't be very productive. But hope you don't do that. But in the early on when Save the Hill group first met, I met with Cindy Andrews, Marnie, and Helen Nelson at the counter many times and tried to make sure they had the latest information that was accurate about the project, how to participate. And so part of our job as public servants is to provide information to the public. And so, I'm happy to meet and talk about it, share the documents that we have when we start getting them. We'll have a team here that'll also be available to help with that. And I forgot the second part of you said webpage and then how to,
How to get
who to talk to.
voices.
Yeah, and I think your city council members all have public phone numbers and emails. Those are very effective. They're the ones making the decision. Your planning commissioners also have email contacts and phone numbers on the web. I think their phone numbers are on the city's website. So sharing your concerns with them, many of them will meet in person if your schedules can line up, but you have access to local officials, and that's one, I think, upside of working in a local government is we have accountability to the people we serve, and so do our decision makers.
So Steve, you've hired Lamphere Gregory. If people have questions for Lamphere Gregory, would you encourage them to ask them, and should Lamphere Gregory then give them a reasonable response?
No, any kind of questions to Lamphere Gregory in particular should come through me,
Why is that?
because we're administering the contract.
Okay, could
You're
we
not
change
under
the
contract with
contract?
anybody else.
You see, that's the thing. The contract didn't go to council, so we couldn't review it to guard against things like this, because Lamphere Gregory should probably be open to receiving information from everybody. They're doing an environmental impact report.
And they will. All the comments that come in will go to them, especially when the public comment period is open. If you have questions that you would like posed to them, I will send those over, and we can do our best to answer them. That's all public information. You've requested records. We have to produce emails. There's, all that stuff is public information.
Yeah, and you do
So,
a pretty good job on the public records request, I will say.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
Michelle, sorry.
The other question I have too is the contractor that you've contracted with to do the EIR. They're the same ones that did it before, correct?
Yes.
So I guess my question, not specifically to you, but to the city would be, why would you hire the same, contract with the same company that it got knocked out through court? I mean, why would you use the same company when obviously their original one was flawed and got, for lack of a better way to say it, thrown out by the court, and now it has to be redone? So why would the city, and if you can even answer this, but why would the city do that? Why would they hire the same person that was part of the original problem?
I'll do my best to answer that, Paul, maybe you can add. But part of it has to do with they did a lot of work on the project. They're familiar with the area. They wrote the environmental impact report. That's a fairly time-consuming and expensive process. To start from square one with a consultant, we'd have to go back to square one, basically.
But maybe you'd get a
So-
better result.
So the main reason why that was flawed was, the appellate court found it flawed was the reason that was mentioned in here. We didn't look at open space conservation funding to preserve the property. And that's the first time across the state that's ever been brought up in court. And it's the first decision around that. And it was a surprise. So that's what Lamphere Gregory will be looking to remedy. Other than that, all the other information is the same. They have all that research, all the technical studies. Giving that. Yes, sir, in the back. Sorry.
If the landowner is willing to sell, do you have an estimate on how much it would cost?
It's always negotiated, of course. It's urban value with the land use designations on it now. We're estimating it to be between $15 and $20 million. That's so much. Yes.
That'd be pretty substantial.
Right.
It's more than these people in the room could collect if they wanted to buy it and deal with their problems.
Speak for yourself.
Well, I mean, if you feel so strongly about it, maybe you collect some money and buy it.
Got it.
Sorry, gentleman in the back. Sorry.
Did the landowner give you a reason why she doesn't want to sell to the city?
They are, one, in contract with Lafferty, the Garrett, and I.
Steve,
That's
have
the
you ever
reason she's given
spoken?
me.
Have you
So the-
spoken to them? Have you spoken to the ladies?
So I'm going to answer the gentleman's question in the back. The Garaventa family has owned lots of property out here. Some of you folks here live on land that they owned at one point in time and sold to developers. The city tried to buy the property, the 85-acre property, back in 2006 and 7 or so. Had it appraised. I thought I had a deal with the gals. Their uncle put the kibosh on it. Both times because he said he didn't want to sell it for conservation purposes, he wanted to develop it. So that's kind of their track record, their history.
Yeah, he died
We
in
have a-
2013, right?
Right. We have a couple of letters from the elder owners now who also have a trustee who say they're not interested in selling the property to the city for
Who's the trustee?
conservation or,
Who's the trustee?
it would be great if you'd stop interrupting me, Doug.
You're leaving things
I
out,
don't remember
Steve.
the name of the trustee off the top of my head, but I'd be happy to get you their name.
Please do.
Yes, sir.
So let me try to give you some history of the environmental impact. May I come up to the board?
Sure.
Sure. And I want to say thank you for your presentation. I thought you did a really good job in laying it out.
Thank you.
I am pro-development, but not for this project. What you didn't see and what you're not talking to is that in this area, I've been a resident here along with my entire family since 1999, and our home was just being built. Now, were you aware that this hill that you want to build on is due to an upwelling of oil? Are you aware of that?
Just continue.
Okay.
Steve, we've
So
talked
I want
about
to make
that
sure
in
you
here.
guys got this, because
I-
you're going to be a processor, so please let me finish the presentation. What you guys are going to do, you're just going to process information. You're basically an operations guy that's going to take information in and filter it out, and hopefully people will come back and get us answers to what we asked for. But last time, they were very dismissive, very dismissive. And then it only took the court to overturn it. But in this area, you know that there was an oil spill due to a fracture in the storm drains.
Right.
And that filled up that entire area that had that been lit up, that whole side over there on Edgewater, every one of those people would have had to move out. And that probably would have come back up to the storm drains and taken those homes out. You're aware of that?
Yes.
You had to go back in and you had to reseal it. So if this home or this home site is an upwelling of oil, and you, sorry about that, I don't know how you're going to bring that back, but if that is due to an upwelling and you're going to put in those storm drains, where's the storm drains going to come through? Right back into that area. And if there's a leak in there, you had to go back in and reseal it. And you had to spend thousands and thousands of dollars per day to filter out that water that had all that oil in it. Those are the things we want to make sure that you see. And that's a concern of mine because I'm less than 1/10 of a mile from where that spill was. I don't think a lot of the other folks were here, but since '99, and to include the Greystone environmental impact, had oil listed in there to include some carcinogens. The next question was, in that development, what happens when you come into the filter, and out of all of that development, what's going to go down to the alkaline silt sink, which is further down, talking with Pam the other day at Zone 7 meeting. That's part of Corps of Engineers. Are you guys taking this to the Corps of Engineers too, to have discussion of what that impact's going to be when you go to build? Those are the type of things I want to make sure are looked at. And then when we talked about mitigation of overdevelopment, we got a simple question that was asked. If you went back in 1964, down south in Southern California, Diamond Bar, California, was outback, just like Livermore. 10 years later, you go down and take a snapshot of Livermore or Diamond Bar now, it's freeways coming through homes, no open space.
Lots of small.
And here you've got biological issues, or the ecological issues, and some of those went away. The burrowing owl, the red-tailed fox, which is now moved all the way down, I believe, to that alkaline sink that used to be up in this area. So those are the things I want to make sure you guys are addressing. But again, is this truly the right place to do it? Because the more you open this up and you're saying you want to preserve the biological, ecological area, you think about all those kids are going to come out, they're going to walk along that creek like what they started to do here. What's going to happen down there at the creek? It will no longer be a preserve. No
If you
longer.
don't send the email,
Appreciate that.
it won't get addressed.
I'm sorry?
If you don't send me an email, it won't get addressed.
So there's a number of pieces that you raised in there: geomorphology of the area, presence of oil, or presence of oil, basically. Federal Army Corps of Engineers. The sites had extensive, first of all, we of course knew about the oil issues out there. Required extra testing below the site and adjacent. All that information is part of the environmental impact report. They didn't find any oil deposits there. We still know there's an issue out there. The site is, the developer is required to specially design their pipes so they're sealed from allowing oil to seep into their drainage and their water. They have to have separators in the event that it does get there somehow. They also have to get permits from the Army Corps of Engineers, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, State Department Fish and Game, and Regional Water Quality Control Board, in addition to what they're doing for the environmental impact report. So yes, they'll have to square away with those agencies too.
Were you?
Am I miss? And then, in terms of how the hills were formed there, I don't know if that's due to there are active faults and things out there. I don't know that it's what the particular reason is, if it's presence of oil that made that upheave. Sorry for that.
That's right.
Just one thing. To the gentleman's point, though, I mean, we're trying to answer your questions tonight, but we would encourage you to send us emails, and we'll.
Is there a project manager for this development instead of having 5 or 6 people you have to send it to?
Yeah.
Is there just one? Have you got a card? Would you leave it up?
Sure.
His contact information is on.
I have a few cards, not one for everybody. Yes, sir.
So obviously, there's a lot of passion that surrounds this project. It's been going on for a long time. There's a lot of back and forth going on. We were involved prior to when it got approved last time. We went to the city council meeting. We're invested with the people in the neighborhood. It seems like there's a lot of hostility. Even now, you guys feel very uncomfortable for whatever reason. I don't know why that is, but it seems like you're very defensive. And it seems like instead of it being a collaboration, it seems like we're just talking to each other and not really coming to a conclusion that's best for this neighborhood and for Livermore in general. I'll tell you what, when we went to the city council, when they approved it, Lafferty was there. He was aggressive. He was arrogant. He was, just very, very matter of fact and did not give a rat about it. And I don't feel like the city council really listened to the neighborhood as well. So what we're seeing right now is almost just another representation of that same experience we had 4 years ago when this got when it got approved and then turned into what it is. How can we make this better? How can we resolve this in a better fashion? I mean, from the standpoint of what kind of changes could be made to this? I mean, you talked about the Hawk Bridge, that should still be in play. That was 10, 15 years ago when some other neighbors who are probably not even here now fought to get that removed, okay? And so having now just one access point to this new neighborhood presents a problem for us that live in this general area. We've got, a lot of traffic issues, we got speed issues, we have access issues, things like that. So there's just more to this right now that I think is going, and I just feel like it's just going to be ramrodded again. You've got an agenda going right now, we're going to be voting on this real soon, and really we haven't discussed the project again. It seems to me it's a new project, not a project that's been morphed over multiple iterations of it. So how do we solve that? Does anybody else feel that here?
If I may, first of all, to repeat, Citizens for Balanced Growth doesn't believe this hill really can be urbanized. So what the court wants the city to do, and what they seem to be, well, in a way, avoiding doing, is fully examine the no project alternative. We're not seeing aggression in terms of you've never spoken with the owners. You hired Lanphier Gregory without telling anybody. Who's LAFO, by the way? That's a question for you.
LAFO?
You'd never even heard of LAFO. LAFO paid you $54,000 for the EIR process. I don't know what LAFO is. Mary Ann, do you know what LAFO is?
LAFO communities?
You know, no. LAFO, you see, you don't even know who you're getting money from. They pay, it's on your receipt that you sent me.
Right,
So
that's an
there's,
abbreviation
oh,
of
no, it's not. No, sir. It's a separate company. It's a separate company. Now,
subsidiary of LAFO.
sometimes people do this to establish shell companies to obscure and confuse what's going on behind the scenes. There's a lot to talk about regarding the no project alternative, and that is what I believe is going to float to the surface and end up with something similar to what happened with the Farber property. The parallels with the Farber property are unbelievable. Farber took 15 years to fail. The zoning was exactly the same as Garaventa Hill. We're now at year 13. So perhaps we're a couple of years from putting this to bed and keeping it open space. We'll buy the land. Done.
Mr. Mann, we had a question over here, but to your point.
I answered it.
No, but you did but that's part of the problem, is that you guys are fighting amongst each other. We're
fighting
feeling this
us.
tension out here. And I respect all you guys, but you guys have your agenda, he has his agenda. We are caught in the middle of all this, and it just seems like we're not communicating.
Well, our agenda is to try to share information.
Appreciate that.
And gather feedback and hear your comments and concerns. We do care about your comments and concerns. And
Well, I
we
hope
are
so. You
gonna
guys live here in Livermore too, so, you know.
The process is handled appropriately, professionally, and based on where we are right now, we are intending to look fully at the no project alternative and all of its options.
Why are you only intending to and haven't done that already?
We are in the process.
Why is that? Why are you presenting us a project that's ready to go, that's going to be approved within a couple of months, and you haven't even looked at the no project alternative? I mean, what kind of attitude is that?
Because folks were saying you guys are hiding stuff. This is an effort to try and give you information on where we're at right now.
But it's the same thing as it was 4 years ago.
did hide it. The environmental evaluation process has just started.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it looks like the project's all ready to go.
Yeah, that's the way I feel too.
How are you just starting the environmental assessment of the land if you already have a project to present to us? You already have the units planned out.
The project applicant has told us that they are resubmitting the same project.
Okay.
It's not changed.
Right.
So that's the project that we've been given. That's the application that we've received.
Okay.
And so we are beginning the environmental review.
I'll go with Mr. Furst and then lady there.
You said that they have a contract with Lafferty. Is that an open-ended contract, or is that has a time-certain contract?
I have never seen it. I do know that they're, Lafferty's paid them money over time to keep the contract going. That's usually how land deals work.
Lafferty pays them separately. Just clarify that. Lafferty has an individual relationship
it's
with
not-
Lanphier Gregory, and they get paid by paying you, and then you pay Lanphier Gregory as well, correct? I believe that's the case.
I don't know what the contract looks like between Lafferty and property owners.
So my question basically is, if it was a time-certain contract, in other words, a 10-year contract or something, is there any hope for us that the contract would run out and the women might be open to other alternatives?
We've asked several times if they're interested. We're willing to ask again and to try to engage and see if that answer changes.
I'm also the Sierra Club rep for the Altamont Creek Open Space Committee. We've discussed this project a number of times. We have the money to help purchase it, but again, we need a willing seller. But there is money available.
Yes.
Hi, I'm a new resident of the area, so and my question is, where can I learn about environmental aspects of this development, about possible problems and the way they suggest to mitigate them? So, any website, any report I can read?
Sure, we do have copies of the document electronically I can share. We'll get that posted up on the website so you can look at it. And it has all the technical studies, biology, geology, drainage, traffic, all that stuff. If you want to look at all that, it's, yeah. So I'll get the message out to the group when we post that up on the website. We'll also put up the past plans and the Planning Commission reports and things like that that summarize some of that stuff.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. In the back.
Oh, I was just gonna
Very back.
the website. Is it just the City of Livermore website?
Yeah, it's City of livermoreca.gov.
Okay.
And search Garaventa and that'll take you to the webpage. Yes, sir. And I'll work my way in.
I have a couple of questions, but they're all one-word answers. How much is impact fees for the city of Livermore per lot in this development?
I don't know the answer to that.
It's like $100,000 a pop.
It's usually,
I suspect it's more than 100,000.
yes.
But those impact fees cover the cost of providing service.
I understand.
The city does not make money on those.
When are they collected?
They're collected typically at building permit issuance.
So, I'm sorry, I want to add on to what you just said, just really quickly. You said it goes to the city maintenance. I thought the project was going to be, I didn't think the city was going to maintain that property.
No,
So,
it covers the cost of providing service.
so what service, though?
So
We get pictures, we get police, we get firemen.
So now, you're not specifically going to say service for that development? I mean, as far as streets and sewer and...
No. So there are a variety of fees, right, that are conglomerated into at one point. There's a school impact fee, for example, and Zone 7 has a fee. There's an impervious surface fee. There's a fee for processing the building permit, a variety of different fees. By government code, we cannot charge more than it costs to provide whatever service is incorporated into that fee. Does that help answer the question? Or Steve, you have anything else to add?
No. Then right up here.
So following up on the question about the environmental impact report, on page or slide number 20, there is the question of, is the property contiguous to existing protected lands, or does it link protected lands? Now,
Sorry, can you say that again?
yeah, so on slide number 20, there is a question of, is the property contiguous to existing protected lands, or does it link protected lands? Now, looking at the map, on slide number 28, there we go. Just west of the site, the project, the proposed site, isn't that some kind of a preserve, wildlife reserve?
Yes. That's owned, it's the Garaventa Wetlands Preserve owned by...
Why isn't it listed as such in the map?
I don't have lots of preserved properties.
Okay.
I just have the
And
process.
then there is Brushy Peak,
Yes.
east of Laughlin Road. Okay, another area that is treated as environmentally sensitive. Okay, and there is a corridor on the west side of the project site that links the two. So my question is, what does the environmental impact report have to say about that? Do you know?
About a wildlife corridor?
Yeah, I mean, about the question on slide number 20, is the property contiguous to existing protected lands?
Yeah, so the criteria on slide 20 are in the settlement agreement to determine if the money can be used for the property. I think you could easily find the property meets these criteria.
That it is adjacent to environmentally protected areas?
Right.
So what does the environmental report have to say about that?
Their money can be used and our money can be used. The money is not the issue.
No,
The issue
I'm
is,
not asking
yeah,
about the
yeah.
money. I'm asking about, what does the environmental impact report say about it? Because it seems to me like they've overlooked that. If it's listed as
Well,
a criteria for rejecting this site for development.
Yeah, my belief is that there are going to be a lot of environmental details that people did not have the wherewithal to put into the report that are going in now, and it's going to make it much more difficult to even think about developing that hill.
Okay, good.
So the environmental impact report does discuss the biological value of the property, its relationship to other land,
Yeah.
wildlife movement.
So I'm curious because I haven't read the report.
Sure.
What does it have to say about that question? How does it answer that question?
They're going to do a new report.
I'd like to get access to the report as well.
Very good.
Following on the previous.
Perfect.
That's an old report too, that's not going to be what's going to be.
But I heard something about the report being revoked, the previous report.
The approval of it was taken away, not the report itself is still there, but
It's still there?
the city's approval of it was taken away. Or, yeah.
The approval of the whole project was removed, right? It was rescinded.
Okay.
Set aside is this.
Steve, I have a real question.
Right here we have a question, yes.
I'm a mom of 2 young children, and I'm planning on raising my kids here. And you mentioned in the current project, Lafferty has a school fund set aside. Can you tell me what that fund entails or what it is?
Sure, each residential development has to pay a school mitigation fee, and that's one of those impact fees that the gentleman brought up. It's based on square footage of a house, I believe, and basically goes to cover the cost of providing school services for the K through 12 in the school district.
So if our, if our current school is pretty much at capacity, where are these children going to be going to school?
Yeah, they'll...
Do they build pods and put them on campus?
That's been one way the district has addressed some, when folks decide to go to a school, because you can take your kids to any school in the Livermore School District, I believe.
I thought that, not anymore.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay, it just
Might
changed
Okay.
last year.
Yeah.
So those children will be, if they're K through 5, will be going here, but we're full.
Yes.
So they will be going to school in a...
So we did just have a meeting recently with the superintendent, and he did say that children were allowed to go to other schools as long as there were openings in those schools. I mean, there may be some schools that are full and at capacity and they can't accept new children, but if a child wanted to go across town to another school and that school was open, he did tell us that that was allowed. So we hadn't heard that.
We're full.
You're full of the school?
Of this community. Yeah.
Right. And so the district can use that money to build new classrooms, to build new facilities. It really is intended to be for construction of facilities. And so that would be an option for the school district. How many homes, Steve? 38? No, 44 homes. So you're probably, looking at 40 to 60 children, somewhere in that range.
Steve, is the 76 home...
Sorry, let's go...
This is quick, Steve. Is the 76 home plan off the table?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, go to you first.
The other thing I want to make sure you put on your timeline is that PG&E tore up a portion of Bear Creek to lay and upgrade wire. Why wasn't that up on our timeline to support that project?
Well,
I mean, if we're going to be transparent,
yeah,
that was being done after it was denied, and yet Did the city do that, and who paid for that? We did, probably through PG&E. But everything in there was told stop, and it was supposed to be an upgrade.
Right.
I'm sorry?
And no one really seems to know who requested it and who approved it.
Right.
If you read the articles that have been published, one group says, well, I got the application from this group, but I didn't know it was Garaventa. And then the other group said, well, I knew it was Garaventa, but then we didn't send it on, and it's just a whole bunch of finger pointing.
Yeah, it's a lot of people blaming each other.
When I called PG&E, they just said, oh, next thing you
We
know,
thought
I
it
think they
was
got a lot
city.
of phone calls.
Yeah.
And-
He says we don't know
Yeah, I
if it's
mean,
Garaventa.
So I don't have that information prepared today because we're...
But I'm just curious, how much of that was actually laid as part of that foundation to bring power to that site? How much of that was actually done?
I don't think that any new lines were actually laid and kept in place, but, and I don't have the information today, but we can provide that for you. We can provide some of that on the website.
Yeah, I want to clarify something in regards to how the city works. And, you know, I understand you guys maybe offended by my, you know, belligerence, but when I spoke to the city regarding this PG&E line that was being put in without the project being approved, I mean, it took so much effort just to get something that shouldn't be happening and something that people shouldn't even be paying for to, you know, get the head engineers of PG&E and the city out there and to get them to stop that. It's ridiculous. It's embarrassing for the city. And, you know, the people that I'm talking to, these head engineers and so forth, they're collecting like up to $500,000 in salaries. And this is the kind of thing that goes on, right? So to your question, who approved it, the person that approved the project or that PG&E line was, her name is Farnoosh Levers, right? And she, maybe you know her, but she is in charge of this Garaventa project, and she's in charge of all encroachment permits in the city. So for the city to say that, oh, we didn't know this and they didn't know that, it's just another lie. And it's unfortunately, it seems that's the way the city tends to work. That's why I want to, I guess, make a point again out of this not even being a matter of public record, because these things are being said and then it just gets dusted under the mat. It doesn't really, I mean, did anybody get held accountable for that? PG&E screw up? Anybody? No, right? Do you know? No, you don't, right? Even though you're the project manager for this project, right?
So errors are made, right?
Yeah, expensive errors though, right? And does anybody pay for that other than us? No, that's the thing. And there's not really a remedy to it. There's nothing that you could say. It's just, it would be more of a you know, actions speak louder than words thing, you know. So you may say things to me that we are all human beings, but at the end of the day, you know, nothing gets changed. So sadly,
I was trying to answer your question.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
So errors happen sometimes, right? And when that happens, we go back and look at what happened in the system. Some changes were made, I believe, in the processing and the review to make sure that wouldn't happen again.
Yeah, you know what, sorry to interrupt, you know what the engineers told me at first when I brought that up? They lied to me and they said that that line was being laid as a general improvement to the neighborhood. And I looked at the permits myself, and it was clearly being laid parallel to the existing utility just to support a project that's not even approved. So, you know, you say mistakes happen and we're human beings, but this is not a matter of mistakes. That's just a flat out lie, right? Professional engineers certified by the board are lying to me directly to make sure that things that shouldn't be happening are happening at the expense of taxpayer dollars, right? So that's not, you know.
So I doubt that anybody was lying to you.
Oh, do you want me to pull the emails up and go back to the conversation? I could show it to you, but I know you don't really care, so it's okay. Yeah.
Here's the thing, we do care, and we are trying to have a conversation with you.
Right.
The gentleman in the back asked us about having a civil conversation. I'm trying to do that. It's challenging.
Yeah, it is. With me, it's especially challenging. Yeah, it tends to be that way.
You understand that challenges are trust when stuff like this happens and they go, oh, it's a mistake. I saw a quote from the gal who mentioned, and she said that her quote, well, I don't know the exact words, but her point was, I check these permits, you know, inside and out, over and over, and then later on, it's like, well, I made a mistake. You know, this is going to be a tough thing for you guys to get. We need to trust what we're being told, and it's really hard to do that when things are brought up that we weren't aware of, and then when we did, I don't want to say meeting me, but when it was caught that they were trying to put a line in there, and then it's just said as a mistake. So what if we didn't call out that thing? Where would that mistake be now? That mistake would be lines going in for a development that really hasn't been approved. Is that right? So we're the ones that are hurt by that. And then you've got to understand, you know, a gentleman back there said there's tension and all that. Well, you got to understand that these things that have happened are to our detriment. And if we don't find them, then we could get screwed. So you got to understand that why we're coming out this way. Because there's been mistakes made, and it's like, but it's not. It's a big deal. And as this goes on, it's hard to trust. Do you understand that?
I do.
You guys understand that?
I do. So,
okay.
So it is, you know, I don't know if I can have a different word than unfortunate, but very unfortunate that happened, obviously, right? And the last thing we want to do is undermine trust with the community. We're here.
But that happens, so I mean, it really has to be on the money when you guys tell us stuff, because then we find out it's not quite what we're being told. And so now we're like, is this real? Is this real? Is there something here that we haven't been aware of, or on purpose not aware of something? Again.
So we are trying to come before you today and do the best that we can to provide you with information. We're happy to have an ongoing dialogue with you and continue the conversation. We're going to do our very best. Okay. And I'm sorry that things have happened before that undermine trust. You know, we're going to try to rebuild that with you and have a dialogue and help you to be aware of, you know, all the possible actions and opportunities within this process, right? And
were you
anything
guys
else that we
aware
can
that
do?
There was a second spill?
Anything else that we can do, you let us know.
So were you aware there was a second oil spill in that same location after you guys sealed it? And the fire department knew nothing of it. They didn't know about the first one in the sealing. And I walked out to the fire department and I said, were you aware this happened a few years back? And they were unaware. So my question there is, when we're talking transparency, is there communications within all departments of the city being told that all of this conversation we have when you finish your presentation is probably not going to be brought up because there's nothing in there recorded to grab all the conversations except potentially the note taker. But there were some other things. My biggest concern is the welfare of my family and the neighbors that are there because of that oil spill. And you're saying there was no oil found over that way with the upwelling. You're going to put storm drains in that are going to go down lower that's going to connect to right where we're at. That's my concern. And with what was presented before, not so sure I'm kind of trusting these guys that are coming out to do the environmental impact. How are you ensure that's going to be unbiased? And who's going to be held responsible if something goes the wrong way? That's the question. Accountability. So you got to know, you did a great job up here in presenting in the timeline that you had, but how much of this information that you're getting here from everybody was actually provided to you to include in that timeline? So part of that is, are you really listening to us? And it may not have been you at that time, but somebody was there, because I can tell you that the person that was there previously was at this last meeting at the presentation over there by Costco by the city of Livermore. She's retired, and it was Pam, and we kind of went over this entire discussion and what was going to happen at this meeting. And I said, it sounds like there's nothing really been done to change, to really bring change, and to step forward and say accountability. And we're going to find somebody out there that's really going to do that environmental impact, potentially we can trust. to include everything else you've talked about, what about, it used to be a preserve. It used to be. What's going to happen to it now? And if you think that putting a footbridge over there and emergency access, boy, that's going to open that up so much for Altamont Creek, and anything that's what is that, east of the Vasco Road, that's not going to be a preserve anymore.
I'm sorry, which used to be a preserve?
The one that I pointed out to the west.
Yeah, so
the proposed project.
appreciate those comments. We got folks waiting in the back. Gentlemen in the back there, okay, then right up front there.
Just,
Yeah, we have a few minutes left here.
Yeah, this project has been going on forever. I mean, it just seems like it's dragging on, dragging on. Do y'all have a good idea, the citizens of Livermore who actually live here, raise families here, are more people opposed to this project, or are they for it? Do y'all know that? Because I would think as y'all's, serving us, y'all would do what's best for us and not for a developer and the money. So I'm saying if more people are against this project, why can't y'all do all you can to kill this project so we can move on? I have 2 kids, they've gone to the school, they're going to, the schools are overcrowded. You cannot fix infrastructure issues already when this is being built. It's going to be too late. It's like trying to widen a highway. It's just no time. We have traffic issues. When they're building right back here and my kids are playing, what are you going to be doing about all the dust blowing around? Because there's high winds up there. Is this all in the environmental impact? So yes, we are very passionate about it because we live here, we're raising our families, and we don't want this project to proceed. And I want the city to do everything they can do to kill it. And if y'all haven't even talked to the owners in good faith, I mean, that's the first thing you should do. Say, hey, the people want to preserve it, and appeal to their emotions. It's all about money too, but if you can, you should be able to find out how much Lafferty's going to pay them. If we have funds in I don't care if it's going to drain it. If the funds are there, just pay it, because that's what the community wants. I'm so tired of this project. We've been trying to save this hill over and over. I enjoy hiking this hill with my family every freaking day. So you're trying to take that away.
But
and we
it's not
don't
your
want
property.
it. Listen, I'm talking to them. Yes, you're for it. That's fine. But I think you're the minority.
I probably am in this room. I agree.
Yeah, because we all live here.
Well, no, I live here too, but
I appreciate those comments. We'd like to.
Sorry, I'm asking them a question on what they're doing about trying, like I said, I agree, it's their property, but if we're willing to pay them the same amount, it is all about money, it's all it is.
if they're willing to sell, that's a different story.
They're selling it to Lafferty, right? It's being developed. It's the same thing. It's money. So how much money are Lafferty going to pay them? The city pay them.
Wow, folks it on us. That's great. We're doing our best to convey information to you about the project. We're going to be updating our city council. We do that through written updates on how this meeting went, sort of what the sentiments were, what the points were. I know, it doesn't. It's clear that most of the community surrounding the hill doesn't want it developed. Okay, we understand that.
So then shouldn't that be the first thing that you take into account before doing everything else? I mean, the people that live here, that's first, right? And then everything else.
So I want to go back to gentleman there in the blue, Mr. Furst, and then up front here, please.
Are you going to answer that later, or what is that? What is that? You're moving on to the other gentleman. Shouldn't that be the first thing that you consider when it comes to building it? Yeah, I understand. So when it comes to building, shouldn't be the first thing the people that already live there and are impacted. I understand you're tired. I'm just, but that's a real question. Isn't that the first thing that you consider? The people there that are impacted.
So if you let us answer that question, we will, and then we can move to the next person.
Okay.
So we do obviously care about the community. We live here in the community. We care. You said you'd let me answer the question.
In the community where? I mean, I live here by the hill, so
Okay, let's go to the next person.
He passed, gentleman here, and then.
I want to represent a different position here, guys, because maybe the community around here doesn't want this development, but I want to represent the people who aren't here. And that's the people who are going to move in here, right? If you go back before we had the Bluffs and we had Altamont Creek, if Farmer Frick put up his hand and said, I want to save the Bluffs, I want to save Altamont Creek, you know what? It wouldn't have been developed, right? I've got 4 kids, you've got 2 kids. We have a housing crisis, for God's sakes, right? Hey, let me talk. We have a housing crisis. My kids, I've 3 of them already moved out of the house. None of them could live in Livermore anymore, right? They can't afford. I can't afford to hire employees because they can't afford to live here. Yes, this isn't going to solve it, but let's let the people, think about the people who are going to live here, who are going to be our neighbors, who are going to be great people. Maybe they can even live in Livermore. Yes, thank you very much for presenting what you've been doing. Of course they feel hostile. You guys have been attacking them for 2 hours, for an hour and a half here.
Oh, no.
But anyway, thank you very much for a great job that the community does not feel the same way as all these people here do. Thank God that there's other people who do. Thank you.
Yes.
You have a question for me?
Sorry, we have questions. Question from over here on the side.
Guys, progress is inevitable. It's going to happen whether we like it or not. We're just population. We voted down, I've been here since 01. We voted down, I believe it was Measure B, 15 years ago. They were going to give water treatment plant. They were going to give $1 million towards a new high school. They were going to give a new fire department. And we voted it down. So our responsibility is to make sure what's being built is going to impact us the least amount, but it's going to happen whether we like it or not. You know, it's just progress. We voted down IKEA because we didn't like the color. And we thought it was going to have too much traffic. Well, the traffic's coming by anyway. Well, we're not getting the economic proceeds from it.
But my kids are going to be right over here.
My kids are here too.
And
I'm here too. I live right down the street.
Not for long.
It took me 5 minutes to walk.
We'll be in Modesto.
No, yeah, it's true, actually, because my kids can't afford, I actually can't even afford to live here. So, housing has to happen. We have to grow.
All right, appreciate that. Carol, sorry.
Our water, I want to make sure our water, so I know we already have a water issue. I know you've gone from 77 to 40 something, which is great. So the lots are bigger, less, I think that's great. Lots are bigger, less houses. How is it going to impact our water supply?
So, yeah, water's a regional thing. We do get our water from a wholesaler, which is Zone 7, comes from the Delta. They sell it to the city. And then we also buy water from Cal Water. They have, back in our last general plan update, said, okay, yes, Livermore, we'll have enough water for you to build out your general plan. We're going through that again now, that type of analysis in our general plan update now to look at water supply, especially given the climate and drought and
When you have the more houses, the 77.
So if this project were approved, there would be enough water flows. What Steve is mentioning is citywide, we're also looking at additional locations for change and opportunities for growth. And the state requires us to plan for a certain amount of housing, so we're looking at that in water more holistically. But for this project, if it were approved this next time, there would be enough water.
But what is being changed from the existing system now? The water would stay the same, basically, is what you're saying?
The existing water supply would not be impacted.
Okay.
Carol.
Hi, I'm Carol Silva, and I just have hopefully a relatively quick question and comment. And it seems like the major point is the lowliness of the seller. So what I want to point out is it kosher for the city to contact the real estate broker, who I assume is the representative of the ladies, and copy a letter to the ladies saying that you would like to have a meeting with the real estate broker and the ladies included just to discuss what their concerns are, and maybe something can get resolved since you're also talking to the ladies. So I was wondering if that would be kosher, and that in the letter you said, you would say that you want to understand their point of view.
Yeah, I think we can express to them that there are other groups or folks who would like to talk with them.
Marianne, what do you think?
Short answer, yes, I
I'm
think.
sorry, I can't comment.
Marianne, what do you think?
I'm sorry, I can't comment without my scholars giving me information.
Can we go have tea with the
No.
ladies?
No, you cannot. You've been very hostile to them and to me, and things that you said in the newspaper, and I really do not want to talk to you.
Right there.
We have time for a couple more questions. Our folks are here to shut down the gym. So sort of here, and then we'll finish up in the back there.
So I think there's a general plan meeting coming up on the 15th at
Yes.
Croce. Will this be covered there, or is this beyond, is that meeting beyond, because I think you said general plans are 10 to 20 years out, so this is within 10 years for sure? Is that the thinking at this point?
This particular property.
Or could it go into, could it spill into the 10 to 20 year out window, so to speak, since it's gone on for 15 years, 13 years, whatever I've heard today?
So the community-wide meeting that we're having is focused on other areas of the city that are specifically called out as focus areas. And that's the general gist of that meeting. But we're in the midst of an outreach process, and you can provide us with any feedback that you'd like about growth or change or not wanting change within the community.
And this isn't the meeting for that, though. This is
The one on the later this month.
the one on the
is not.
15th,
Right.
is though.
Okay. We will not be focusing on this site in particular.
Okay. Because I like what the city's done with all the parks we have. LARPD has 40 to 50 neighborhood parks, and they got those by asking the developer to donate land. Like this Altamont Creek Trail is one of the best trails in the city of Livermore. It's wonderful. Wouldn't have been there without those homes being built. Those neighborhood homes, by the way, right? So if this thing's going to get built, I'm thinking, what do we want the developer to kick in? And what we really need, I think safety-wise, is something like an underpass on Vasco Road. Because there was a boy that got hit in 2022, and it was a near miss. We dodged a bullet, and he survived. He wasn't hurt very badly, but Vasco Road, and kids with schools on both sides of Vasco Road right over here, it just doesn't make sense. So I've asked the city to look at doing an underpass right where the creek is, like we have on Holmes Street, like the city of Fremont has, where you go under Paseo Padre and Dakota and all those other busy streets. There's no interaction. So to me, that's a safety issue. Those are bigger safety issues than a burrowing owl or some salt or some other environmental minor issues. We're talking about lives here. So I would advocate for that. And if we're going to, dangle a carrot in front of the developer, possibly we ask them to kick in and coordinate this with Zone 7 and connect and do what LARPD says their charter is to do, which is to tie all their parks together. And Christensen Middle Sports Field is LARPD. Altamont Creek Trail is LARPD. And that could be the first connection, so to speak, to do what they say they want to do.
Okay. Thanks for the feedback.
Okay.
Lastly here, and then we can wrap it up.
Does the city consider their 2022 climate action plan before they approve this project?
Yes.
Okay.
The most recent climate action plan was adopted last year, so that document was after the environmental impact report.
So in this next one, it will be addressed?
No, sorry. So that the new, I'm not sure. I have to get back to you in particular on if it's going to touch on that.
What should?
It sounds like it's not going to be updated.
They're just going to pass through the old environmental impact report. That doesn't make sense. They'd have to address the city's climate action plan.
What I heard.
Right, so I'll give a specific answer to that. We're taking notes here. The previous environment, we had a climate action plan before the most recent one. So I believe the environmental document references that.
Okay.
And we do need to wrap it up.
Do you know why the Superior Court denied the Save the Hill plan originally?
Because the project was consistent with the general plan and zoning.
No, that's incorrect.
That was the
No, that's not why. The trial court, let's answer his question. The trial court denied it on a technicality. The technicality was that the residents who were bringing these issues to the council weren't sophisticated enough in their language to use the magic words. The appellate court said, you don't need magic words. They were telling you, they were asking, where's the money? They asked you, Steve, is there any money? And you said, nothing. That's what was illegal.
They also asked you where the money was.
No, they didn't. I didn't even know about. I didn't know about Garaventa Hill until I read about it in the paper after the meeting.
Coming out tonight, we have to wrap it up.